Hi again. I'm delighted to welcome my guest today, Sir Clive Woodward, who is one of the greatest, if not the greatest visionary in the history of British sport. His brilliant autobiography, Winning, sets out a philosophy that has challenged accepted practices, revolutionized traditional approaches, and effected radical improvements in all the sports with which he's been associated. To start with, he was a brilliant rugby player, and I think I've got a commentary clip coming up. We're catching up with ourselves. This is that fantastic autobiography called Winning, which details his analysis of how to be successful at the elite level.
Moment again. Smith, Hugh Davis, across comes Woodward. Woodward with this lovely silken running of his. Oh, that's a brilliant bit of running by Woodward. That is a magnificent try.
Grand Slam success in 1980 for Clive Woodward, 21 caps for England, great club success with Leicester, achievements and success with the Barbarians. Clive was the perfect rugby player. And then, of course, he went on to become the first professional coach of England, a revolutionary appointment in the time, and we're going to do a fair amount of talking about that. He surrounded himself with a great team of people, again, a revolution in terms of the coaching setup, and that led to extraordinary successes, and we'll all remember the World Cup, the Grand Slams, Sir Clive's honours in the BBC personality. So it's great to try and to catch up with Sir Clive. Our careers overlapped a fair amount, and so welcome, Sir Clive. And what is it you're involved in at the moment in the world of sport?
Thanks, Alastair, and hello, everybody. And great to see you also, Higgy. Long time no see.
Yeah.
I kind of do four things now. The biggest thing I do is I'm the director of sport of a international ski academy in the south of France in Tignes. When I say it's an international ski academy, we're trying to be the best ski academy in the world. We've spent over 50 million euros building the academy. We've been doing that for 7 years. We opened on January 2020 and we shut down in February 2020 because of COVID. So it's been quite a challenging time. So the whole idea is it's International Ski Academy. We've got 12 different nationalities there now. We've got 80 kids there now between the ages of 12 and 16, and that'll go to 160. So that's a great project for me because it's all about international sport, and we're trying not only to be the best ski academy, but the best sports academy. So hopefully any day there's a football academy, they want to come and see what we're doing. We want to share all our information, what we're doing. So that's the main thing I do. I'm involved in a small software company called Hive Learning, based out of Chiswick, which is a new start company in 2012, which is, I think we've got 85 people there now. So I'm very proud of that. That's success that's happening. Do a certain amount of kind of corporate speaking and coaching. And I say corporate speaking, coaching in terms of sports coaching and business coaching in terms of individuals. And there's one other thing I do, which I can't really think what it is. And I do the media. I do write for the Daily Mail, which I mustn't forget. And I do the ITV for the England games. So those four things, they kind of fit really well together.
Yeah.
And allows me to keep out of trouble and really enjoy what I'm doing, to be honest.
So let's take it back to the beginning. That the early love affair with sport. How did it start, and how did it manifest itself?
Oh crikey, that's near. That's my dad was in the Air Force. My father was in the Royal Air Force. He was in the Royal Air Force all his life. And I think just being on Air Force bases gave you quite a lot of access to just kids outside playing, and there was a bit of a sporting culture. But for whatever reasons, he kind of. I was always into football. I love football. And I was always going to play for England at football and God knows who. And then my dad got a little bit scared with that, to be honest. And I got sent away to a boarding school in North Wales called HMS Conway, which is a Merchant Navy boarding school, which is a pretty tough place. And they played 3 sports, rugby, and rugby. So you either had to kind of get on with it. Because when I first played, I didn't like it. I wasn't that big. Didn't get knocked around. But the longer I was there, the more I realized the only way to survive in this school was to be good at rugby. So I started playing rugby, and the rest is history, really. I kind of, I didn't play for England schoolboys because I was stuck in Wales. But when I left school at 19, I was there for 5 years. So I went into London, joined Harlequins, And next thing I'm playing for England Colts, England under 21s, and Harlequins first team, and it just kind of took off really. But it kind of started off with this tough kind of boarding school, which, you know, I look back now, was okay, but it wouldn't have been my choice, put it that way.
Yeah, I wonder how much that your maybe resentment of your father's decision fueled a certain anger in you, or I've got to show them attitude.
Yeah, I think that happens. We certainly had quite a big fallout as I got older. I kept saying, "Why do you do that?" I mean, I was obviously good at sport. You know, I was very good at sport. I can say that. So if you're very, very good at sport, why do you get sent away to a merchant navy boarding school? I mean, so it's a bit strange, really. But you know, the sport at the school was okay, to be fair. Well, the rugby was very good because that was the main sport there. But you know, all that happened was I was the headmaster of this school in Yorkshire. We're at RAF Linton on Ouse, and the headmaster of Easingwold Grammar School, which is a good school. Went to see my dad and basically said, "Look, your child, me, he's bright enough to go to university," which in those days was quite unheard of, and certainly no one in my family had ever been near a university. And he said, "Look, he's bright enough to go to university, but he's not going to go there because all he does is play football." And to be fair, all I did was play football. I did no work. I played football. So, and he said to my dad, "You know, we've got to do something about it." And because my dad was an officer in the Air Force, he had the ability to send me away to boarding school, no cost. So instead of sending me to some nice football boarding school, I went to HMS Conway in North Wales on Anglesey, and really stopped me playing football to play rugby. He didn't want me to play rugby. I don't think he quite realised how good at sport I was, or I felt I was. So that's what happens. There's one of those things. We never really recovered from that, to be honest. So I was never that close to my dad after that because I just couldn't understand why he did it.
Yeah.
There again,
and the rest there was history. You were good enough at rugby playing in Wales to warrant a trial with the Welsh secondary schools.
Yeah, I went down there. There's this guy from North Wales because there wasn't many boys played rugby for Wales, came from North Wales. There's many South Wales, and I was obviously a good player. And this Welsh guy took me down to Welsh trials, you know, down in South Wales. And I was obviously English, went to this English merchant navy boarding school. And I remember at the time, you know, this was all totally new to me, and I was a bit sort of starstruck, really. And the guys I was against was Gareth Davis and Terry Holmes, who went on to play for the Lions. So there was me from HMS Conway, not speaking Welsh really, up against these guys, and we still laugh about it now because you know they were my peer group, Davis, and so I went down there, and you know, so I've got the excuse that I'm one of the few people who didn't play for Welsh schoolboys because everyone I've met seems to have played for Welsh schoolboys apart from me. So I didn't get into this blinking team because of those guys. But you know, afterwards we went the Lions tour together. You know, I played for England, and the rest is kind of history. And I joined again with Harlequins. I just literally walked through the door. No one ever heard of me. I literally went to work in London after I left school. Went to work in a bank down there, NatWest Bank, and just literally walked in the door at Harlequins. And I started off playing in their 5th and 6th team. They didn't know who I was. Then within weeks, I'm in the first team playing with Bob Hiller, who you remember well.
Yeah. So what were your sporting ambitions at this time? I mean, you'd gone to the Welsh school secondary trial and been turned down.
I knew I was good at rugby, and I guess my ambitions were, okay, I'm going to show that I'm really good at rugby. I was very ambitious with it, but there was still this hankering about football because I think I was a better football player, and I still think I'm probably a better football player than I was a rugby player, and I was absolutely convinced, and I think I would have made it. But you know, I had to then choose between, you know, and if you don't play between the 13 and 16 when you're waiting, there's no football. Literally, if you're caught with a football in my school, you're gonna get beat up. It wasn't, you know, football wasn't a game you played. You had to play the rugby, and that was basically it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that changed it a bit.
Yeah, same in my school as well. But what position did you play at both sports? That'd be interesting.
Our football sort of left midfield. I was very left-footed. I was trying to get my right foot as well, but I played left side in midfield. And in football, so in rugby, I started off scrum half because I was quite small.
Right.
I played scrum half, then played fly half. And again, looking back at my rugby career, I really wish I'd stuck at fly half. And the only reason I got moved is I was slightly bigger than everyone else. But that was my best position. That was when I went down to Welsh schoolboy trials. I was playing fly half. That was my best position. But you know, then I went into club rugby, played for Harlequins at 10. To be fair, all the time I played fly half. But only when I went sort of got a bit older to Leicester and Loughborough University, I ended up playing centre because all the fly halves were tiny. Because I was a bit bigger, I played centre, but I should have stuck at fly half. you know, and that's what one of my regrets. Man, I think I was really better fly half than I was in the centre.
Interesting. So your rugby career, you've got this idea that you can make it in rugby, but rugby is a very amateur game, it was in those days. How did you balance the idea? I know you said you went on to Loughborough, but you applied to Durham originally.
Yeah, that's a story in its own. When I left school, I applied to Durham to do law. I don't know why I want to do law. It just seemed like a cool thing to do. There was no, because our school had no career advisors whatsoever. It was just this school. So I wasn't going to go in the Merchant Navy, that's for sure. That's one thing I absolutely knew I wasn't going to do. So I applied to Durham, and I forget what the grades were. They offered me a place, and it was like, you know, an A and 2 Bs or something. And then I literally got sort of 3 Bs, and I got this really pompous letter from the Durham saying, well, you're not accepted. I missed by 1 grade.
Yeah.
So I'm now 18 years old, left this school, got no university to go to, no job to go to. So I just saw this advert in the paper for people who hadn't got into university from that West Bank. So I applied for it. I went to interviews in Oxford. They gave me a job. They gave me a full-time job in the bank. I had to go and work in London. So I ended up working in Richmond. So that I was in digs. They put me in digs for the while. And that's when I walked into Harlequins. So I walked into Harlequins, started playing for Harlequins. And there was a couple of guys from Harlequins. You probably remember, I think one was Gordon Wood, a winger.
Oh yeah.
Remember Gordon Wood?
Yeah,
I think he went to Cambridge and Oxford, but first of all he was at Durham.
Yeah,
So anyway, he was playing at Harlequins.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was a good player, and he just said, and I told him the story. So he then got all the Durham people, or it was either Gordon Wood or someone like that.
Yeah.
Next thing, I get this letter from the Chancellor going, we've revisited your application. We're going to offer you a place. Then Higgy, the worst side of my personality came out. I just wrote him back saying, I think it's an absolute disgrace you're now offering me a place just because I'm playing rugby at a high level. You've changed your mind. So I told him to stick it, which looking back now is ridiculous. But that's probably either the strength of my character or the weakness of my character. So I had to start again. So I just applied to Loughborough and said, right, I'm not going to do law. I'm going to do sports science, something maybe I'm maybe a little bit more suited to. So Loughborough took me on straight away. So I had a whole year off in London, which was a great year playing for Harlequins with Bob Hiller and Stuart Winship and some Nick Martin. I remember these players. And I was just saying, hey, they've never heard of me. And I was all on my own, basically, because I, moved away from my parents. And so I turned down Durham again. And my dad went nuts when he heard about this. It just went crazy with me. So anyway, went to Loughborough.
Yeah.
That's when my rugby really took off because Jim Greenwood was there, one of the great all-time coaches. But the one coach I would say I learned most from was Jim Greenwood. He was my coach at Loughborough and ended up having 4 years at Loughborough with Jim Greenwood, which was just fantastic, because you were like amateurs, but you're professional, you're really fit. And we just never kicked the ball. We ran the ball everywhere.
Yeah.
I had a great time at Loughborough with Jim Greenwood as my coach.
And his book was Total Rugby, wasn't it?
Total Rugby, yeah. Still the absolute best book on rugby ever been written. It's the absolutely Bible in New Zealand. When you go down there, all they talk about is his book. And it is still the one. There's millions of coaching books out there on golf and cricket and God knows what. Hardly any books on coaching rugby. Hardly any. And his book was the absolute Bible in terms of rugby coaching and playing.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading some of the books that came out. My dad got a few that came out in the 30s and 40s. And they're almost comic books now in terms of the sort of advice they would give to players and fitness and all those sorts of things that were totally outdated, even in the, what I was reading in the early 70s, I suppose. So Jim Greenwood actually had a sort of a vision for, as you say, total rugby, of everybody having a part to play.
Yeah, he was absolutely fantastic. I mean, he would be a great coach today. The game hasn't changed since he coached, but he was absolute believer in everybody should run around, pass the ball from 1 to 15. Total rugby. That's what it was. And the emphasis on skill, the emphasis on speed of ball from line out, from scrum, from rucks. Nothing's changed today. It's still the same. Football's football, rugby's rugby. He was the best coach I've ever had. There's no doubt about it. He wasn't in the bay, way ahead. And I had some good coach. Chalky White was a very close second. Chalky White was excellent at Leicester. But Jim was special. He was an amazing guy. And why he never coached, England or Scotland, or anyone. He played for the Lions, who he had the great sporting pedigree. He played for Scotland, the Lions, but he never coached international level, which was crazy.
It was a special time for you then. 4 years at Loughborough, you didn't play any club rugby whilst you were at university. You were just able to absorb everything that Jim could throw at you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, again, you make some good decisions in your life and some bad decisions. For my 4th year, because I did a 3-year degree in sports science at Loughborough with Jim. Then the 4th year, I did a Cert Ed.
Yeah.
And I got a call from Oxford University saying, why don't you come and get a blue and come to Oxford and do a Cert Ed down here?
Yeah.
Now, again, like an idiot, looking back now, I should have done that. I absolutely should have done that because I've gone to Oxford for a year and I've got a blue, which would have been great.
Yeah.
Playing against you probably.
Yes.
But I then Jim said, look, you're captain of the side. So I stayed for 4 years at Loughborough. Yeah. Looking back now, that was crazy. Looking back now, you just go, why do you do that? I mean, I was just kind of, hopefully it was due to loyalty, but I could have gone to Oxford and done a Cert Ed for a year and whatever, and got a blue, or hopefully got a blue. But I didn't do that, so I just stayed at Loughborough, and then stayed on Loughborough afterwards and joined Leicester Tigers which is a local club. They obviously knew me, and they got me a job with Xerox, and that's what happened.
Yes, I was going to say that being a student rugby player it's like a nice oasis because you don't have to think about employment and things alongside that. But when you play rugby, you have to think about the job you do, or you did then in the amateur days, about the job you did in the week. And you decided not to be a teacher, but to join Rank Xerox.
Well, I wanted to play for England, and it became clear, I had a job offer at Uppingham School. I went to see them, but even then, the thought of me playing for England and Leicester was saying, well, how are you going to do both? There's a lot of time away. And you can see they weren't going, wow, this will be great, we'll support you. Then I went to Xerox, where one of the members at Leicester, I remember his name in a minute, he was brilliant. And I went to this interview, and they said, look, we'll give you full support here. We're going to give you a car, a salary, and all this sort of thing, and take as much time as you want. We're going to be, if you want to, we think you can get to the top. So they supported me basically. So I was really sponsored by Xerox, so I was working for them. That allowed me to be, even more full time in terms of. But it was a bit weird because I still laugh now. I then started playing for England, but I'd play for England on a Saturday, and you're there at Twickenham playing in front of 60, 70,000 people. Yep. As an amateur.
Yeah.
And then 8 o'clock Monday morning, I'm in the Rank Xerox offices.
Yeah.
Having to give my forecast how many flipping photocopies in the cell. I mean, it was people looking at now, they look at you must be crazy. And I'm getting some bloke giving me a hard time because I missed a tackle. This is on the BBC. And I just it was so amateur. It was so amateur. That's why we loved it. I mean, there's so many good things about being an amateur player for rugby union. But just the humor, and you play for England, and it really was how much you could drink Saturday night with your friends from Wales, the Welsh players, and they'd all be free, and so you'd have to drink as much as you could, and then sort of stagger home Sunday somehow, and then go to work Monday morning and try and work out how many photocopies you're going to sell that week.
How did the approaches needed to play rugby at the top level and to do a job to your satisfaction? How did they vary? How did they help each other?
I think they helped a lot. I mean, Xerox was great. I mean, to be fair, they were absolutely fantastic. They put me on, they were very professional, all the sort of management training, sales training, all this sort of stuff. And then you looked at the rugby side, especially England, and it just wasn't. It was just really amateur. We literally turned up. I mean, you've just literally turned up Thursday lunchtime, shook hands with people you hardly ever met before. And then Saturday, you were playing in front of 70,000 people at Twickenham. We had one training Thursday afternoon, one training Thursday afternoon, a session Friday morning, usually on the pitch or at St Mary's in Teddington, Twickenham. Then you played, then you went home. Then you went home on Sunday morning with a big hangover because you went to this big posh black tie dinner on Saturday night. And that was playing for England. And we loved it, to be fair. It was great.
Yeah.
Made some great friends, and it was but you compare it then what I inherited as full-time coach.
Yeah.
This way, I'd much rather be in a full-time professional player playing under me than what I experienced playing for England for 4 or 5 years in terms of the amateur days. But there was just a big contrast between your work environment, very professional, really well run, and the England setup. And that wasn't England, it was everything. That was the amateur rugby. That's how we played the game. But there was still full houses at Twickenham. And looking back now, I never questioned it. I never questioned that we should be getting paid for this.
No.
He's an amateur. It was just you did it for fun, and it was more than fun because it was great. Twickenham and Full Houses and BBC and Bill McLaren, you know, meeting all these legends that you kind of remember. And so yeah, it was a great time, but I've got no regrets. But you just look back and thought, you know, I'd love to have played as a professional sportsman. I'd love to in that short period because it goes so quickly, as you know.
Yeah. But in rugby terms, you couldn't, playing for England, you couldn't be as expressive or to do the things that you could playing for your club. That's what I certainly I found out. But you had so little time playing with people in front of a big crowd against very good opposition.
That's half my wish. I wish I'd played fly half because that's my best position.
Yeah.
I think if you are playing fly half, you are going to get the ball. You would be able to really express yourself because, you know, me playing in the centre, you playing at fullback, you're relying on other people.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you got the England forward back who just the whole team talk was when you get the ball, the number 10, kick it down that end of the pitch. All I want to see is the opposition numbers running backwards.
Yeah.
So that was our team talk. So I spent most of my rugby career looking up in the air trying to catch balls from the sky or just chasing after kicks.
Yeah.
So that was the disappointing thing. You weren't able to do that short period of your life doing something magical. I mean, if I showed my kids me playing for England, they'd all fall asleep within 10 minutes because, Dad, where are you? You ever touched the ball? We haven't seen you for the 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Play. So it was very different.
Yeah. So it was frustrating enough for you to call an early end to your career. You didn't. You decided to make a move after 2 Lions tours and all those England caps, but you made a conscious decision based on your career, really, didn't you, to go to Australia?
I'm not sure it was a conscious decision. There's a guy called Alan King who was my boss in Leicester, great guy. He got the job ahead of. He went to Australia basically with Xerox. He got head of Australia, and then literally I got a note. I nearly said email. I don't think it was even an email. It's probably a fax in those days. I don't think emails were around in those days. But I got a letter from him basically saying, "Look, I'm here. This is fantastic, and you know, there's a job going in Sydney under me. You'll be this position in Xerox. You should consider it." And I was just started to think about it, and I literally just I'm gonna do this. I just did no planning.
Yeah.
And I just decided I could do it, and I did it. I mean, the people in Leicester were just astonished because you don't do that sort of thing. And I'm going, guys, if it doesn't work, I'll be on the plane home tomorrow. So it's not a big deal here. But I am going to go and leave. And it was very unusual. I think I was one of the first sort of English people to go and play abroad.
Yeah.
So I went down to Sydney to Manly. And looking back now, that was one of my best ever decisions. It was the making of me, definitely, just to be totally independent, go and work abroad in Sydney, play rugby for Manly, really see a different environment, different culture. I would encourage any person, child, anything, to work abroad for a certain part of your life. I think it makes you realize how fantastic England is as a country, but also gives you different experiences. I love Sydney, you know, and got married in Sydney to Jane. We had 2 kids in Joe and Jess were both born in Manly in Sydney. So, you know, won a World Cup in Sydney. So I quite like Sydney. It's a pretty cool place. So it's the best thing I've ever done in terms of working abroad for a few years. And that was something that I was really pleased I did.
Is that where the coaching bug bit, as it were? Or?
I'm not sure. No, I don't think so. I think there was a couple of, Bob Dwyer was coaching Ramwick at the time. It was interesting to see other coaches working because I'd been with Chalky White. I'd only had 2 coaches, Chalky at Leicester and Jim Greenwood at Loughborough, both fantastic. But if you think about my background, my thing was I'm a trained teacher. I did my degree in sports science, did a year Cert Ed, so I'm a trained teacher. And you know, I say there's so many people, coaching is teaching. You know, you've got to be a good teacher. And I think this is why so many high-level players fail, because they don't literally take a year off to learn how to teach. You think it's automatic how to coach and teach. It's not. It's a skill set in itself. I think so. If you're a good, and also the team that I put together that won the World Cup, every one of us was teachers. Every one of us, Andy Robinson, Dave Allred, Phil Larder, we all came through the education world. So coaching in rugby is teaching. So I think I was always probably not even destined is the right word. I think I was always going to go into coaching at some stage because that's what I actually quite enjoy. That's, you know, I love the Loughborough teacher training course and all that. So, but Australia, you did see in a different way. Alan Jones was coaching at Manly, he was the Australian coach. Bob Dwyer was there. Seemed to be a lot of the best coaches were Australian. So I did take for the first time probably more notice of what's happening in another country on the coaching side. So it gave you a more breadth of ideas. But I never was thinking I'm going to go on and coach England here. That didn't even cross my mind. Didn't even think about that.
Well, I mean, it wasn't a career, was it, to be?
No, it was just like an amateur game. You did it for fun, and I was just too busy working at Xerox to be able to coach at all.
But you came back to England and got involved fairly quickly in coaching, first with Henley and London Irish. How did you get involved there?
Yeah, that was again quite straightforward. We had 5 years in Sydney. I loved it, but Jess and Joe had been born, and with grandparents and everything else, it was time to come back. And it was a big call because they offered me citizenship. Right. Alan Jones tried to get me playing for Australia, which was quite amusing at the time. So, but I could have become an Australian. And I remember my favourite line to all these Australians, they go, well, why do I want to become Australian when I've got a British passport? Why do I want Australian? Which went down like a lead balloon, as you can imagine. So we went through all that stuff. And so I came back, and all that happened was I moved to, I was working in London for Xerox. I left Xerox by the stage. I was working for a finance company called Portfolio Leasing, who I joined in Australia. And we moved to this place called Cookham, where we still live today. And Henley's quite close. And one of the captain of Henley was a guy called Mike Poulsen. And I was at university with Mike. I was his best man at his wedding. So we go back a long, long way. He was a captain of Henley. And he tried to see if I wanted to play, which I was never going to do. But he said, would you fancy coaching? And I just went, not really. But I went down and did a couple of sessions and got the bug. And you just started from there. I mean, coaching is coaching. Suddenly all your competitive juices came on. We wanted to win. So I started to take it quite seriously. So although I was running my own company now, my own finance company, which was going really well, I spent a lot of energy and time on this club Henley to try and get them to be successful. And one of the best things I did was, as I was running my own small company now, I had a small business. We employed about 10 people. So I employed these couple of Australian kids. When I say kids, these are Australian schoolboy internationals. They were fantastic. And once I employed them, I paid them. They didn't ever come to work. So I broke all the amateur rules, as you can imagine, by doing this. But I employed these two kids. So if you, let's say kids, they're 19, 20, give them a gap year basically, come and live with me, and you're going to play for Henley. You stick two absolutely ringers in your team at Henley, you're going to win. You know how good a coach you are. So of course, suddenly Henley are winning all these games because we've got these two complete kind of ringers in the team. And of course, I became a great coach because you're winning all the games. You must be a great coach because you're winning. All it was because I had these two Australian lads, and they came in and were just superstars, and they were brilliant. Of course, Henley loved it. We were suddenly beating all these teams that were beaten before. And I am coach. I'm sort of doing myself down a bit. So I am coaching the team. We're playing all the way we want to play. But I had these two Australian lads in, and we're never going to lose with these two guys. And we had one in the backs, one in the forwards, and they were just fantastic. And they took all year. So suddenly we start winning, we get promoted. Next thing, Twickenham on, can you do the England under 21 team? And the rest is history. And that's where it all came from. But it's amazing, and I still never forget that. It's amazing how good a coach you are when you got a full strength team. When you got all your
you are doing yourself down because you not only brought in the ringers, but you brought in several different and unheard of coaching methods to Henley, didn't you?
The loud unheard of. It was very much stuff I'd learnt in Australia.
Yeah.
Especially the flat ball game, which was played by the Ellers and Bob Dwyer of Ramwick and Eddie Jones. He was at Ramwick at the time. So I was teaching.
I was coaching as well. Was it Henley you brought in the loud music, or was that London Irish?
We brought in loads of stuff. I was always quite entrepreneurial thinking, but it's okay bringing all this stuff in, but you've got to have good players. So that was a big lesson with these two Australian kids. To be fair, if they're in the team, you're going to win the game. You are going to win the game, but then you can coach and do all sorts of stuff, and people start to listen to you. So that it was good, and so Henley was really, I loved Henley. Henley was a great time of my life. We came back, had our third child, Freddie, who was born in High Wycombe. So he's hacked off because his brother and sister got passports from Sydney, or birth certificates Sydney and Manly on the beach, and he's High Wycombe. So we had to explain that to him as he got older. So so that was all good. So I really spent a lot of time at Henley, and then got approached by London Irish to coach them.
And from them, I mean, you had two successful seasons with London Irish, or more?
I think everyone was successful, but that's when the game went professional.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It was at the beginning of.
but I just, again, it was people, strange how people just assume things. That a lot of people under Irish thought I was going to come in and try and make it English. It was the opposite. I went out my way to bring all these Irish players over from Ireland. The people I became unpopular with was the Irish people in Ireland, because I was saying to these guys, why are you playing in Ireland when you can come and live in London and play for London Irish? You know, and we're going to play this kind of rugby, and ended up with this fantastic team. You know,
Gabriel Fulcher came across, didn't he?
Henderson, Rob Henderson played for the Lions. So Rob Henderson, David Humphreys, Conor O'Shea, Gabriel Fulcher, Jeremy Davidson. I brought these Irish players over, and of course we started to win again because I got the players in, and we played a certain way. I like to think those Irish players loved it. They certainly tell me they did, because we played very differently to the way any Irish team played at that time, and we started doing really, really well. Then the game went professional, and then it all got totally confusing, to be brutally honest.
Yeah, it was a very odd couple of years. But you had this time, you've done the coaching with London Irish. You'd had frustrations as a player playing for England. When the first ever professional coaching job at England came up, how much did the reservations you'd had from playing and the difference there is between coaching a club where you have players all the time and coaching at international level, how much did that weigh on your decision to apply or to carry on with the application?
Well, I didn't apply for it because the game went professional. I'm running, if you see what I'm doing now, I'm kind of coaching London Irish, running my own business, 3 school fees, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And suddenly, literally, there's no exaggeration, I heard on the radio, the game of rugby has gone professional.
Yeah.
I'm like, literally, what does that mean? I mean, I'm literally ringing people going, what does this mean, going professional? And we all got caught in the Northern Hemisphere, especially England, with our trousers down. When this was led by the Southern Hemisphere, and we didn't know what we're doing. The RFU did their normal. They put a kind of a stop on it for 12 months while they're trying to work out what was going on. And it was all over the place. And it was quite confusing times because players didn't understand this. London Irish couldn't afford to play players. They couldn't afford to pay me. And we just didn't know what was actually going on. But then literally, Don Rutherford, who was the director of rugby at the RFU, really good guy who I knew from my playing days, came to see me. And he said, look, it's almost like, he said, we've had this board meeting or committee meeting, and we've decided we want you to be the England rugby coach. So I was like I was anointed. Yeah. And I'm going, okay, well, because I was coaching in the 21s, so I wasn't coaching. They knew what I was doing. Yeah, I was coaching in the 21s, and I like to think it was a good choice based on merit. Yeah. And I thought about it, and I said, Don, you've got to maybe think about this, because this has come from complete left field here. And I remember saying to him, can you give me some indication of the pay, the remuneration? And he actually looked at me and said, actually, we've not thought about that yet. So I've come offer me a job. They didn't know what I was going to pay me. So he then went away and came back, and he offered me this salary. I mean, no, I'm not going to be daft, but it was like a sort of a first year teaching salary. Yeah. And and I started laughing. So he came to we got a lovely house. My business was going well. And I'm saying, Don, this is great. You're offering the England rugby coach. So I shall bring the kids in and going, great, Daddy's England rugby coach, but you've all got to change schools. We've all got to sell this house. But the good news is I'm the England rugby coach. So, and he said to me, well, what do you need to do it? And I said, well, I need to think, because I get, direct bonuses and all this sort of stuff. So I just sent him a note with this huge figure on in those days. And he rang me back and said, look, it's not going to work. I said, well, that's it. I said, fine. So I didn't apply for this job. You could poach me. But by that stage, it was all out in the media that I'd got the job and all this sort of stuff. And it was Frank Cotton who rang me. He was a board member. Frank ran me. And he was a great guy, He's a brilliant guy, a good friend of mine. And of course, he was just laughing at all this, of just how amateurish this whole thing was being done by, because we all got caught. So eventually, with Fran negotiating on my behalf and the RFU, we got the job, we got the deal done. Yeah. But it's a huge risk, to be totally honest, because without being too flippant about it, my business was going really well, being successful. Got 3 kids at private education, got a lovely house, big mortgage, all the normal stuff. Yeah. I'm going into a completely new world, in terms of first full-time professional rugby coach. So all my head was going, no, don't do it. This is ridiculous. You'll regret this. But my heart was going, to answer your question, I've got to do this.
Yeah.
This is my chance to put up or shut up. In other words, all the frustration times of 4 or 5 years playing for England where I hardly touched the ball, I can now go and do something.
Yeah.
And I am the boss. There's no doubt about it. I'm in charge of this. I'm the first full-time coach. So, Jane fully backed me, the family backed me. That was it. And I kind of put my business on hold, joined the RFU, and just kind of went for it and just did what I normally do and just threw the kitchen sink at it. And, eventually we started to understand what we're trying to do.
Because you were presented with a blank canvas. I mean, nobody had done the job before. There was no precedence or anything like that.
Totally.
So how much was having complete blank canvas a good idea or a good thing for you, and how much was it a disadvantage in that nothing had been done before and there was no...
A bit of both. I mean, to be fair, it's the blank canvas was fantastic because also the interesting thing from my finance background, we basically, my finance company, you lend money, you're lending money to office equipment companies and all this sort of stuff. But our number one thing in lending finance, you never lend money to people who've not been in business more than 3 years. There's some figure, 85% of businesses go out of business in the first 3 years. If you survive the first 3 years, the chances are you're going to make it. So you lend money to them. So all my background is don't be the first one in. Don't be the first to do this because it is a blank canvas. Let the first person in make all the mistakes and errors. You come in 3 years' time. But of course, you can't guarantee that. So I went and got through all my kind of logic and financial backing saying, I've got to go in with the blank canvas. You start business and just throw the kitchen sink at it. And that's what I did. And looking back now, it's fantastic because the RFU, especially Don Rutherford, their support me was brilliant. They didn't back off because they knew it was, I'd taken a big risk to do this, which I've never regretted. But they were fantastic. They started to really back me. I like to think my business background helped, Alastair, because what I was able to do was go and present to the board and manage upwards, which is a real skill of how you manage upwards individually and collectively to get the decisions you want, especially on finance in terms of hiring the right coaches, building a team of people. Go and get these guys wasn't a cheap, and they weren't used to this. They weren't used to hiring. They weren't used to paying me. They weren't used to paying players. They weren't used to paying other coaches. This was all totally new to them. I think the other thing was because of my finance background, I can read balance sheets. So for the first time ever, I'm getting the balance sheets of the RFU, and I'm just going, "What are you doing? You can't spend money on this." And they say I can't have money on this. And so I can read a balance sheet. And of course, they all got a bit exposed by that. So all this stuff that we never saw before was all hidden. They couldn't hide it from me. So to be fair, it was great times. I loved it. It was just this great people, Frank Cotton, especially Don Rutherford, Cliff Brittle, who's passed away, unfortunately, I was the chairman. And we had some humdingers at the time, but we eventually kind of worked out what we're trying to do here as a professional team, and the results started to come eventually.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have known about the obstacles from the player coaching point of view, from actually on the playing field, but there must have been a whole load of unknown obstacles that you suddenly came across.
Oh yeah, I mean, loads of them. The council was classic. I did report to 57 people.
Right.
At the time, there wasn't a chief executive. Francis Barron was first chief executive. I wasn't allowed to report to Don Rutherford for whatever reason. Probably because I didn't want to be fair. And I reported to 57 people. So that's the classic. Just 2 secs. So I've got a dog in the room.
The dog in the room. Yeah.
Barking to get out. So yeah, I reported to 57 people, which was quite challenging. And some of them were okay. But I think I never fell out with anybody, but it was just challenging, and the budgets were challenging, and our first tour was the tour to hell.
Yes.
Which, I mean, again, you look at it and you just go, who did that?
Who and why and how? Yeah. But I mean, so from that point of view, who was it more important to get the buy-in from? You've got this new job. You're very confident you can do it. You've got the RFU themselves, which we've talked about, the players, the media, and the public. Presumably,
the number one. Excuse me. The number one thing was the players.
Yeah.
We had. I'm still a player. I still think I'm a player now. So the number one thing was to sit down with them individually and collectively, and really try and paint the pitch about what we're trying to do here. And it was challenging because they weren't used to it. But I like to think, based on my business background, especially my small leasing company, which was like 10 people, that skill set, I did that for 8 years.
Yeah.
That allowed me to run the rugby team as a small business. That I wasn't, I was used to taking risks. I was used to managing upwards. I was used to taking people with me. And, and also suddenly realized we had this great group of players. I mean, when I took over, Martin Johnson, Lawrence Delalio, Jason, Backy, all of them, amazing. And then as we started, the young Johnny Wilkins starts to come into the fold. I capped him when he was 17, I think, or 18.
Yeah.
So suddenly you start to look at, we got the players and all that kind of common sense started to kick in. To really get to the top, you need the finances. We've got the RFU, got more finances than anybody else. We've just been spending it in the wrong areas. 2, we've got the expertise in this country in terms of coaching and sports science, which I was totally comfortable with. I made a point, and I never said, everybody in my team was English. I wasn't going to hire anyone who's not English. I would have done it if I not thought of that skill set, but every position we had good people in England who could do it. And you often think the grass is greener. And I've seen so many other sports hiring all these Australians and Kiwis. We weren't going to do that. So I had all this team of English talent from Andy Robinson, Dave Redding, Dave Allred, amazing group of people. Then you got the players, and suddenly I go, we've got a good team here. So logic says there's no reason why we shouldn't be successful. And that's why I started to drum into people. This is the chance for a lifetime. And I think the thing that helped me being a player, I played for England 21 times, which isn't many in today's standard. That was like 4 years in those days, because we only played, 4 or 5 games a year. So I was in the team for 4 or 5 years, and I could pin them to the wall and say, you got one opportunity of this.
Yeah.
You're either going to do this or you'll regret it the rest of your life. But I think we can win at the very highest level because these 3 big tick boxes. And that was getting that across to them. And we had some bright players. Martin Johnson's amazing players, we all know, but he's bright. He gets this. Lawrence Delalio is bright. He got this. And I said, if you really believe this, we can do this. And they understood it. They weren't daft. Most of these players, they're the opposite. They were really bright people. And I just kept saying to them, I need you to question me on a really professional basis. Anytime you think I'm not doing right, I expect you to come and see me and talk to me about it. And I don't want to read about it in the press. And that's what actually happened. And we created this really strong culture. And we started to get really excited about the way the team played, what we were doing. And it was an amazing period of rugby for English rugby.
But if you characterise rugby as a sport, you'd say it's probably the most reactionary sport there is around. How much of a pushback was there from the people within the sport, from the traditionalists who said, well, we've always done rugby this way?
Yeah, it wasn't going to pushback. I'd take them with me. I don't think they're saying, because we started doing some pretty amazing things, just in terms of the fitness of the team.
Yes.
Just that was completely off the scale. And this helped in my sports science background. Dave Redding came in with a brief, every single player I wanted to be power, fit, fast than anyone in the world. And that takes money as well as time. You've got real investment in terms of the people involved, what you actually need to deliver this. And of course, you still got the people who maybe didn't quite get it, who still very skeptical. They fundamentally did not believe that England could ever be the #1 ranked team in the world and win a World Cup. Yeah. That was their opening thing. And I'm just using all my common sense because, well, I think we can. And that wasn't me being bravado or trying to keep my job. I think we can because of these. And why can't we? Yeah. Because they've never been close to it. When you played and I played, we were in awe of the All Blacks and South Africans. You just never envisaged beating them. And we started to, and that's what we had to get across. You had to change the whole mindset. So read Jim Greenwood's book. Don't read a flipping book from New Zealand. Stop talking about the All Blacks like we can't beat them. We can. We've got better players, better team, more money, more expertise. We can do this. Just to take a bit of time to get the job done.
What about the support team? I remember I went on an England tour to Australia, and we had a manager, a coach, and one medic. We weren't allowed. We either had to choose between a doctor or a physio on a tour to Australia. And yet, key part of your success has been getting in all these experts to help, to support, and to provide the extra things that.
Yeah, it kind of builds. You've still got to have the fundamentals of the coaches and the players. Then once you start to get success, start to build some, the other layers. You build this high performance teams. But that it wasn't that, radical. Of course, you need sports science, you need because I think when you come from a sports science background, which I would have done from Loughborough, when I was there with Seb Coe, he was my year at Loughborough, and I used to take the rugby when I was captain. We used to go and watch him train down on. I can see him now just on because the athletics track was just behind the rugby field, and then we go around coast training at 3:00 with a guy called George Gandy as coach. Just go down and watch him train. And it was just mind blowing what he did. He was just a young guy. This was like Moscow 1980, that Olympics there when he won the gold medal.
Yeah.
He used to be George Gandy, who was my teacher in physiology. He was his coach. And you just see the training he's doing.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, if we could ever be as fit as this guy, no one would have touched on the rugby pitch. And yet, rugby and fitness, I think until I came in, that wasn't that link. In fact, there was definitely not a link. And I'm talking about Seb Coe fitness, Olympic gold medal, 800-meter fitness. I said that's what we can do, and everybody's going to be different. Rugby. That's why it's a great game, because you can have people can train like Coe, but they're stuck out on the wing and fullback. But these other players playing prop, second row, they need totally different training plans. They can't be Seb Coe, so you got to be real specialist in how you train and all this stuff. And that was the one thing I kind of loved, the enjoyment of it, and trying to break down barriers about rugby and trying to always break down the drinking culture and say, we've got to move away from this, guys. We're professional international athletes. We should be standing next to Seb Coe and Steve Cram and Ovett and these guys in terms of we're athletes. And people looked at you like you're balmy at times when you're looking at that, because that wasn't the culture of rugby. Culture was rugby was a game and loads of beers afterwards, which that was my culture as a player. But my culture as a coach was just completely got chucked out the window very, very quickly.
Yeah. So it all looks like, it was a plan. You had this idea that you're going to make England the best. And of course, it did come to fruition in 2003. What were the biggest problems along the way, do you think, looking back? The things where you maybe made you question, am I doing this right? Are we going in the right direction? Have we got the right people?
I always thought I was doing it right based on what I had. But the biggest thing was always the access to the players. Yeah. I just couldn't work out, again, back to my balance sheet, what I was saying to the guys at Twickenham, we should be giving the clubs more money, the professional clubs, to run their teams, and in return giving me control over the playing program. In essence, it wasn't a case of getting centralized contracts, but it was a case of, if I didn't want Martin Johnson to play Saturday, that was my call. I'd only do that in extreme circumstances, but I thought through injury, through fatigue or tiredness, I wanted just more control over the players. I never got that. And we had some humdingers around that. Yeah. That was the classic club v country battle. Yeah. But also, I said the RFU supported me. The clubs did as well. The clubs were brilliant. But again, I made out of my way to go around the clubs, especially to Nigel Ray and the kind of really key people. They were fantastic. They understood a successful England team would help them as their businesses were going on. We just couldn't get to final agreement about who was ultimately in charge of the actual players. And of course, the players were being paid by the clubs mainly. Their match fees for England were okay, but not as significant as that. So they had to be loyal to their clubs. Yeah. So, and I didn't want them to be anything but loyal to their clubs. So that was always still going on. Yeah. And, so we got it done despite the system, not because of the system, in spite of the system, if that's the right word.
Yeah, so it all came good. You all came good on that night in Sydney, never to be forgotten. What were your feelings around that particular day and the actual, when that drop goal went over and Mike Catt booted the ball into touch and so on? What were your feelings then?
Well, I was quite pleased the way. I mean, it was a long day. That's what I remember, because it was 8 o'clock kickoff. It was the longest day ever. Yeah. And the whole message all week was no distractions. Yeah, which I think happened in 2019 with Eddie Jones, because there's distractions everywhere in terms of family, in terms of media, in terms of sponsor opportunities. You've made the World Cup final, there's distractions everywhere. So my whole week was no distractions. We're going to train really, really lightly. And what I'm saying to everybody from day one of that week, if we all do our jobs properly, we'll win this game. We had between losing in 1999 to the World Cup final, we played 47 games and lost 5. We're a 90% plus winning team. We knew how to win. what could unfold is that anyone went walkabout, and just needs one person not to do their job properly, including me. So we were massive on that, and I think we did that week really, really well. Everyone stayed on message, and no one lost the plot, basically, which I think they did in 2019. And everyone did the job. That was the nervous thing, was, am I going to be the person who doesn't do their job properly? And I've got, you know, even the coach, in terms of tactics, substitutions, replacements, everything's going on, and you just very calm. And it was a calm team.
Yeah.
And everyone did the job properly. And yeah, we won on a drop goal in the end. We didn't play that well.
No.
Because the pressure was huge.
Yeah.
And it's really strange, because I'm asked, you know, and when Eddie Jones's team beat New Zealand in the semi-final in 2019, I'm reading this as England's greatest ever team or greatest ever result. I'm just going, no, it's not.
No.
It's absolutely not, because when you play a semi-final and you're the underdogs, there's not a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah.
When you are the red hot favourites and you're playing away from in Australia, that is pressure.
Yeah.
To actually get the job done in Australia, away from home, against a good team, obviously playing at home, that was massive. So I still think the World Cup final team is England's greatest ever moment. Just like 66 in the World Cup final football team. But we're playing at Wembley, we're playing away in Australia against the Australians. And that was huge. The pressure was massive. And so the way we all handled it, I thought was really good. You know, and we kind of got the job done. So we didn't play that well, but who cares? That was the one result where you don't care how you play, you just got to win the game.
Were you surprised at the euphoria that it generated? I was there watching, commentating, and my wife was there in the supporters, and the English supporters were incredible then. But then there was the open top bus tour and all of the things that followed on. Were you surprised at how much it meant to everybody?
Yeah, I was totally surprised. To be brutally honest, I was totally not surprised. I think I was kind of in this almost bubble. Oh yeah, that's the right word. Where you know it's all going on, but you're not really exposed to it. And I think what also happens, you know, when you win, Alastair, you get far more accolades than probably you deserve.
Yeah.
When you lose, you get far worse. You know, I've gone from winning England with the Rugby World Cup, where you're up there, and then you coach the Lions, you lose in New Zealand, and you're absolutely down here somewhere, and you get absolutely smashed by everybody. So I've been at both ends of the scale, which is good for you, by the way. You can keep the whole thing in perspective. But yeah, you get far more credit when you're up here. To do something, and far too much sometimes when it's not going quite the way you want it to, because you're still trying your best. You're doing your best. But no, the reaction from everybody, from, you know, going to see the Queen to the Prime Minister, the crowds, family, was just incredible. And you just we have a family saying, and it's normally when we're on holiday somewhere having a tequila somewhere in a beautiful place, we always go, well done, Johnny Wilkinson. So I kind of strap line from having a good time. The kids will say, well done, Johnny. Well done, Johnny Wilkinson. It is, Dad.
But coming back from that, did you have the feeling that the job was only half done or completely done?
Oh yeah, listen, I thought it was quarter done. I was absolutely, you know, like a man on a mission that we'd won the World Cup. We'd not done it because we're the best system in the world. And I said, in 4 years' time, it's in Paris. We're going to win in 4 years' time because we've got the best system, the best players, the best program. No one's going to. I'm now going to create a dynasty, and because this is the absolute start and not the finish. And that was when, for the first time, I really had serious run-ins with the RFU, where we really did come to loggerheads over this. Yeah, and it got a bit tasty at times.
Yeah. Has time given you a different perspective on it, or do you still feel that they felt you'd led England as far as it could go, and you had a greater vision? And
I had a much bigger ambition, because I knew we were nowhere near as far as we can go, but we had to make huge changes now. Because we won the damn thing, everyone thought everything's perfect, and I'm going, guys, it's not perfect. By the way, we've got to do this, and this, and this. And then suddenly, from the board and the RFU backing me 1,000,000%, they were fantastic. Post World Cup, when you now think it's all going to be hunky dory, it's all kicking off behind the scenes, and we're all falling out. And I had to make a decision, you know, and I've been told since that, you know, some of the board members say he won't leave. He loves the job too much. And I did love the job. I absolutely love the job. It's the best thing I've ever done. But I also got principles here where I just said, you've got to understand, I don't think I can win and do this again unless I got your backing. And now you're not backing me. on what I think are totally logical plans.
Yeah.
And we all sat there and crossed their arms, and I just walked out the room.
Yeah.
And it wasn't this one, but I left about 6-7 months later. I just said, look, I thought this through logically. It's not a temper fit. I thought this through logically. You're clearly not backing me anymore. Good luck. And that's history. And I think it was the worst decision they've ever made, because it stopped all the momentum completely in its tracks. I think I was right on the roll. Everything was fine.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, what I was trying to do was get more money for the clubs.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of what people thought. More money for the clubs and more access to the players,
yeah,
et cetera, et cetera. And I said, we want to be the best prepared team, not the worst prepared team.
Yeah.
You know, and that we just all fell out over it.
Yeah.
In the end, when I called their bluff, I got offered a job in football.
Yeah.
Okay, gonna go do something else. If you think you do it right, good luck. And I don't think they've ever recovered from that. And that's me.
No, I agree entirely. English rugby hasn't. But it enabled you to get involved in football, which, as you say, was your first love. What did you discover there that was similar and what different to the world of rugby?
Oh, listen, I loved it. It was just great. I had 1 full year, basically. I absolutely loved it. And I was lucky enough because I went to Southampton, ended up with 3 managers there, including Harry Redknapp. I sat with Harry for literally 6 months, which was just amazing. We could do a blockbuster film about that. He was great. He was absolutely, I'll never say a word against him, but we were different, and we were so different. It was just funny at times. But I had a great time. It's interesting. I did all my coaching badges. I've not got a single qualification to coach rugby, nil, outside of being a PE teacher. Yeah, I did all my badges. So I'm doing level 1. So I'm doing all these badges. I'm a fully qualified UEFA coach and did all this sort of stuff. But the football world couldn't quite see it. They just, you're a rugby coach. I'm going, not I'm a rugby coach. I'm a PE teacher. If you're a PE teacher, you coach football, rugby, cricket, hockey, you coach everything. I can coach this game. And I started to have a real passion about, and I was absolutely going to do it. Then all that happened was I had a great year at Southampton. They were great. Harry was great. Learned loads. I literally got two offers because I was going to start at the bottom level.
Yeah.
Got offered a job at High Wycombe through. His name just lost his name.
Yeah.
Steve Hayes.
Yeah.
Steve Hayes owned Wasps.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So he's obviously known me for rugby.
Yeah.
He said, "Well, I'll give you a job. You can come and coach High Wycombe." So now bottom of the 4th division or something. Yeah. And they got another job through MK Dons, a guy called Pete Winkleman, the chairman also. Yeah. And he was a great guy, big whatever. So I got these 2 jobs, and this is fantastic. So I've done a year in football doing my kind of apprenticeships and all this stuff. I'm now going to take over a football team, be the boss. And then all that happened was Team GB won the Olympic bid.
Yeah.
So I get a call from a guy called Colin Moynihan, Lord Moynihan, who's ex-Minister of Sport. He comes to see me and said, "Look, keep reading about this football stuff. We've won the Olympic bid, and we're making this new job called the Director of Sport Team GB. We want you to be in charge in Beijing, Vancouver, Winter Olympics, and obviously London 2012, like a 6-year contract." So this is like this amazing job. Yeah. So this is absolutely true, Higgy. I've gone home, and I'm sitting out at the table just shaking my head. And Jane comes past us. "What are you shaking your head at?" I said, MK Dons, bottom of the 4th division, High Wycombe, second from bottom of the 4th division, or Director of Sport Team GB, 3 Olympic Games, 6-year contract." And I just can't decide. And for the first time ever, she's grabbed my shoulder and she said to me, "Are we really having this conversation?" So that was the end of my football career, because I joined the Team GB in the Olympics. But I love football. It was everything I thought it'd be. The characters, the aggression. It was just really interesting time for me to go actually get into football. And Southampton were fantastic, and hence I always wish them well. And Harry especially was fantastic, and so we had some funniest moments, but we never fell out. That was a big thing. We never fell out, but it was good fun.
I'd love to talk to you more about the football and the Olympics and Apex, but looking at my time on my computer, it's 1 o'clock already. And so we haven't even got on to any questions. I'm sorry to the audience, but I've had such fun talking to Clive, and I'm sure we've all learned an awful lot. So just for me to say, Clive, thank you so much for joining us on behalf of Goldster and of Sporting London. It's been absolutely brilliant, and best of luck with all your future ventures. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Higgy. It's always lovely to see you. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.